Okay, it's been about a week. I'm going to give another update. I'm back at my place in upstate New York on the Canadian border. I've been doing a little fishing, a lot of fly fishing. Trout fishing is pretty shut off where I've been fishing on the Great Chazy River. I haven't been back, but I went out for a couple of the hot days and it wasn't good. It was really good up until then. I'm going to try it again. But I geared my fly rods over towards bass, pike, and even maybe some muskie. But muskies are much harder to get. And but that's my goal. I'd like to get a muskie on a fly rod. So I've been catching some bass and pike on my fly rods. I have my my trout set up. I have three fly rods. I have a 5-weight. That is my all-around go-to for trout. I have a 7-weight that's a mixture of both for some bigger fish, trout and bass. And then I have a 9-weight that's for the bigger bass and pike, which I throw bigger flies. And that's new to my arsenal, and that's what I use for saltwater, for striped bass fishing. And when I get back to Florida, it's going to be for redfish, trout, maybe some snook. But that's the purpose of the video today is kind of wrapping up my striper season from New Jersey and Cape Cod, which was pretty good. I think overall, I think I was around 65 stripers I caught. And being my first year, going to places I didn't know, except for when I went to my hometown area, and then I really hit some good spots there. I got to fish with couple different friends, one good friend from high school, and it wasn't super, but it was good. But there was a couple super days. But what I wanted to get into was the one of the methods that I employed was a method that's from down south that nobody heard of up north here. And I said it's got to work. So when I was fishing this area in Marshfield, Massachusetts, the water was very stained, and I was fishing, and they weren't hitting plugs. You could fish plugs. I would get occasionally some, I would say it'd be 12 to 1 is probably generous in plugs to bait. So I was fishing mackerel, and I was fishing cut mackerel. And the problem with the cut mackerel was I would free line it where I wouldn't put any weight on it just for the crabs. But the crabs just got unbearable. I mean, it was just, as soon as you put it in the water, the crabs were there. And the bite wasn't good because the water was so stained. So I've been contemplating about this for freshwater, but I said, you know what, I'm going to try what's a tested method down in the south, a lot in Louisiana and Florida for redfish, snook, trout, and other game fish down there, inshore game fish. It's called the popping cork. And what the popping cork does is it attracts the fish. And there's different ways of fishing it. Down south, I fish it with bait, sometimes live bait, sometimes with cut bait. I use a lot of ladyfish down there, and that's what I fish for redfish. So what I said is I'm going to try the on the cut mackerel. I use smaller pieces, and this is what I have. This is the popping cork. So the brand that I preferred up here was called the Paradise Popper. And what this does, this sits on top of the water, and you make this for whatever distance you want. I use a 6-aught circle hook. You have to use circle hook for striped bass. And I would guess that's maybe 2.5 feet. Water was probably, when I was fishing, any between 6 to 12 feet in this canal cut where I was fishing in a harbor. And what this does is you put the cut mackerel on here, and then you cast it out, and this is like a clicking. It has beads on here, and it's weight in the bottom. It sits up, and then you pop it almost like a plug. You pop it, and it makes this noise. And it's funny, when I was there was a group of people fishing. They said, "Are you just going to scare the fish away?" I said, okay. And then bang, I started hammering fish. When I say hammer, the bite was never great, but nobody was catching anything, and I was catching fish. I caught 3 fish that day. So the naysayers said, where can I get that? And I said, you're not going to get it around here. So I did go to a local bait shop, fished one in Green Harbor. There was a young kid there that I went there and I asked him for some, I don't ask for locations, but I just give a general idea where the fish are biting and all that. People are very sensitive up north here about their spots. So he was very good. I haven't been striper fishing since probably the early 80s. So this is my first year getting back into it. Now I fish all the time, as you'll see in my other videos. That's what I do, is I like to fish. He was very good. So I went back and I told him, I said, listen, and I know that he was fishing in the area that I was fishing. I said, just try it. I said, I know it doesn't seem natural or anything, but what happens is the water's so stained, they don't see the bait, and this attracts them. Believe me, this noise, fish are very curious. And most people, oh, you're going to scare the fish away. Not true. So it was very successful. And when I went back to the bait shop, fished one in Green Harbor, it was funny because he said at least 5 or 6 people came in and asked for this. So he says, I talked to his boss, he says they're going to get it. So the problem is a lot of these places up north, they're so set in their ways where they don't think things are going to, this won't work, that won't work. Well, I just took something from Florida that I use for redfish and trout, snook and everything that's worked for me over the years and incorporated this, especially when I was in stained water. Another way of fishing this, and I didn't do it in when I was in Massachusetts, but you fish these 3-inch paddle tails right here. This happens to be Z-Man in the white color. These are killer on redfish, trout, and snook. So you put that on where the hook is, where you put the light bait, and you do that. You would jerk it. Now I use in Florida an attractant, and I put it on there. And I'll tell you, a lot of times when I'm busy in the boat or on from shore, sometimes when it's sitting there, they'll come up and hit it because the attractant, and you popped it, and maybe they've been curious. So what I'm going to do with this is, in my freshwater for smallmouth bass and pike, especially now I live on a river, and I believe that this is going to work for smallmouth and bass. And I think that this is going to be a really good, this 3-inch paddle tail. Now to get back to what I was talking about with up north, they don't like new things. Well, this is a company out of Fort Lauderdale. It's called No Live Bait Needed. In my opinion, it's the best soft paddle tail on the market. Now, these were exclusive to Florida for snook. I mean, geez, they were catching tarpon, big fish on them. Very well made, very hardy. Obviously, if you get a bluefish, it'll cut you off. But they've taken off in the Northeast. So obviously somebody brought it up, and now it's probably the #1 paddle tail for striped bass in the Northeast now. And I know what they're doing is, I had spoken to the company in Fort Lauderdale, in the Cape Cod Canal. This is I believe this is a 2 ounce, it might be a 1.5 or 2 ounce. This would not work in the Cape Cod Canal because you need 5 to 5.5 to 6 ounces because of the current. And I know they just now go to 3 ounces because they don't have the currents that the canal is in. Their business now has become a big part of the business in the Northeast for stripers. So they're going to come out with a jig that's 5.5, 6 ounces. I can tell you right now, I'm going to be a customer because I think these are fantastic. And these are whenever I've caught fish in New Jersey or in Massachusetts, I've tried everything. This was the best. The No Live Bait Needed. NLBN is what they're called. These are fantastic. And that's another thing, it's a southern thing where they brought them up, and they probably was skeptical at first at that. So that being said, try new things. Again, I fish everything. I fish saltwater, freshwater, large game fish, small game fish. I'll I'll go in the mountain. To be honest with you, my favorite place is in the mountains, trout fishing. And if I catch native live brook trout that are 6 to 8 inches long on a fly, I'm just as happy with that as catching a 40-inch striper. So with that, I'm going to leave that. But I wanted people to try that in the Northeast. I'm not saying it's the end all then, but the other thing too is, why not try this as well? I don't know how, again, I can't say right now because I said I haven't tried it, but why not put this on the popping cork? It keeps you off the bottom. It might attract the fish. It might be a little heavier, but then you can get smaller, 1 ounce, 3/4. I'm going to try it. Now, I'm not going to try it for freshwater. I'm going to use those paddle tail for freshwater for pike and bass. But use something bigger because you might get some bigger fish. Now, a friend of mine that I went to high school with tried it, and the first day he did it, he immediately caught a slot fish. And we were fishing in an area that weren't big fish, but there's a lot of slot fish. It was mixed, slot to under, not much over, but a lot under. But it was, and there was days there where, there was one day there where I got caught 15 bass, and up to, and that day, that particular day, I caught my biggest striper on the whole trip. I think it was, and again, I didn't measure it because the bite was so good. I wanted to get my bait. I think it was 40 inches. So the biggest one I got in Jersey, I did tape, and it was 37. So the biggest one I got 40. My goal was 45. I fished. You can see from my previous videos, I fished the canal. I didn't get anything, and I think that was my best chance of getting the bigger fish, but I didn't get it. But there's always next year. So I'm going to put out another video on what my plans are. I'm going to stay here in my place in upstate New York probably till September, and then I'm going to travel to Maine, do some travel in Maine, and then I'll probably start heading south maybe the first or second week of October, and I'll take about 5 to 6 weeks to get home to my house in Florida. But I'm going to fish in between, and I have the van. So other than that, try the popping cork. I think, and try it. Go out of the box and try different things. A lot of people don't do it. Thank you.